Howdy, y'all. We are back and we are actually talking about Thanksgiving week already, which is pretty crazy in itself. So this time around, okay, I don't want to kick that off and I want to shut off these like little alert things. Do not disturb me. We'll give it an hour. We'll see how that works. So do the annual Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Thanksgiving specials this week. Christmas comes next month. Um, Usually what I do is I think we'll sort of keep this. So usually the day of for the Thanksgiving episode, which will come out on Thanksgiving, and we can do one that'll be just basically we'll do like a hey, what things we're thankful for, stuff like that. Do something sort of nice and upbeat. For this episode, which is the beginning of it, maybe a little bit of maybe we do because we've been focusing on this building better habits, building better developer. I'm not going to throw a challenge out, but maybe this is it's one of those where it's getting us into that year end stuff. So we can sort of talk about maybe some good things to do as you're getting into this last really month and a half and straightening things out and like, how do you plan for the next year and maybe wrapping up this year, stuff like that. So sort of the beginning of the end for this year and talk about some of those pieces. And the rest of it we'll do the basic. We can do the good and the bad. We'll probably skip the challenges unless we want to like mention that as part of our good and bad. We'll sort of swing back around to that when we get back on the challenge thing. But I do like doing the good bad. And maybe keep it as like this would probably be a good one for our good bad is do it for like the year so far. So, maybe like a good thing that's happened this year, a bad thing that's happened this year. And we'll try to keep those short, but basically do that. Does that make sense? Does that sound good?
That works.
All right. We'll see how it goes because that's pretty much how we always do these things. I'm going to take a little tea. All right. And not get myself water, but we'll see how this goes. I'll do a little 3, 2. Well, hello and welcome back. You may have noticed that we had a slightly different intro this time with our little annual Thanksgiving special turkey gobble thing, which Michael's looking at that going, I got to find that little piece of music and make sure that he does that when he edits this podcast. Yes, he does. It's in there. I think it's called Turkey Gobble. A little bit of inside baseball there. We are building better developers. We are Developreneur. I am Rob Broadhead, one of the founders of Developreneur, also a founder of RB Consulting, where we help you make your business better. We like find the ways that you are using technology great and find ways to do that better. We find ways that you're not using your technology and find ways to either kick it to the curb or leverage that. And all of those points in between, the focus being simplification, automation, integration, ways to take that technology sprawl and put it into a nice little bucket or a little box with a bow on it because, hey, it's holiday season. Good and bad. In this special episode, we're going to talk a little bit we're going to open it up and talk about good and bad for this year. So bad for this year is from a business point of view, this is one of the most challenging years I've had in a long time and in years and years. I can't remember when I last had this much of a challenge. And it was basically there's a lot of stuff that just, a lot of timing issues and stuff like that. So it's just like a lot of projects that started to look really well. And then, people ran out of funding or they freaked out a little bit about like the markets or the world around them, things like that. So not a great year business wise. Good thing is that even in this bad year, and it sort of goes to that thankful kind of idea of this week, even with all those challenges, there was growth. There was skill growth. I mean, I can say I'm a better developer than I was when I started this year. And there's just a lot of opportunities there going forward. So even though it's it's one of those, I guess it's like when you're face down on the dirt, it's easy to get up fairly quickly and things like that. But so there's definitely better days ahead, even though there may have been some nasty ones behind. Better days ahead for all of you guys because now you get to get an introduction from Michael. Go ahead and share that with us.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Meloche. I'm one of the co-founders of Developreneur, also the founder of Envision QA, where we help small to mid-sized businesses kind of analyze their software stack, figure out if the software they're using really meets the business requirements. And if they don't, we help them build custom solutions or find that right solution for their particular situations. Good and bad for the year. Good. Start out with the fact that I relaunched my company. I went from Meloche Consulting, rebranded, reniched, and got off to a good start this year. Started off with a good customer, and things are moving forward and things are looking bright. Bad side, kind of all the things going on in the world, unfortunately, have had some family health issues, and we're still dealing with that even towards the end of the year. It's just one of those things where sometimes they just can't figure it out, and you're stuck with questions. Yeah, we'll get through it.
So he mentioned end of year, and that's what we want to talk about this time. Is we're getting into this holiday week, which for some people it's always sort of interesting. Is some people this is actually we're getting into a busier time. If you're in the world of you know certain areas, particularly if you're in these places that have these Black Friday sales, and they're this is the time of year where they're like ramping everything up, whether they're and it may be that it's some sort of selling some sort of product, or maybe you're in like the food industry or something like that, where maybe there's more people out, they're eating more meals, travel where people are moving around, or events where it's doing like maybe Thanksgiving events and Christmas events and New Year's events and Diwali events and all these things. It could be very busy for you, but for some of us, it's not so much. And so I really want to talk about the, I guess we'll take both of them, but for those of you where things are like settling down a little bit, that makes it like this is a perfect time to do a little bit of a retrospective. We talk about this every year is take this time to look back on how did your year go? What are some things that you had on your list that you started off, maybe your New Year's resolutions that have faded into the woodwork somewhere, or are there some things that you got accomplished? Are there some things that in particular right now, are there some things that you could still accomplish if you would just like buckle down for the next few weeks and try to knock these things out? And if not complete them and accomplish them, are there some things where it would make a lot of sense to kick the accomplishment or completing that into next year, but use these next few weeks to set yourself up for success? Examples that I've used in the past are things like if you want to write a book next year, like that's one of the things that maybe you're going to do it this year or you're going to do it next year, then what do you need to do to get started on that? Where maybe you want to start some of your research or look into what are the tools for writing a book or publishing a book or reaching out to people to figure out how you're going to go through those processes. Or if you want to start podcasts, maybe you want to go through what's involved with that. What do you need to do to get the wheels in motion for that? If you want to create a product, maybe it is a good time for you to sit down and actually, those are one of the things that I find it's really good in these less hectic times to spend a little bit of time, put together requirements or maybe some design thoughts, but then allow that to just like, percolate a little bit in there so that as you get into the next year that you've got a better set of requirements and design and things that you've actually thought through, that you may spend a little bit of time on it and allow those to think in and to just work through some of those scenarios. It does make that process better if you've now got sort of like it's a second nature for you to think about how that works and what's the product and what is it providing and how do the features and all of those things that make up a product. Now, along all of this time as well, you do want to be able to take a few minutes, like chill a little bit, relax a little bit, things like that. And re-energize basically, because you've had a year. It's like whatever you've done, it's been a year. It's been at this point 11 months. And if you haven't taken a little bit of time to like chill and relax and enjoy life, then go do that as well. And there's nothing wrong with going out and enjoying life a little bit. And you don't have to feel guilty about it because sometimes those are the best times to get those ideas or solve that problem that's been really difficult to solve. We've talked about walking away and taking a break and things like that. So there's just a few of those things that every year as I get into this time, these are things that start to bounce around in my head because there's some things like, well, what do I really want to get done before the end? How am I going to do this like last push? And then looking forward to next year. It's starting to be, you should at least now start to put some things on your radar. Like, what are some of the things I want to do next year? Now, one of the things I want to do right now is throw this over to Michael and see like what are your thoughts on this and where are you at in your year-end rituals, as we'll call them.
So it's kind of an interesting dilemma for me from year to year. It almost changes because it kind of flows with the seasons of work. Because some years, like the start of my year is always kind of slow, and then it's like usually quarter Q2 and Q4 are like my busiest times of the year. And then other years it's like Q1 and Q3 are like slammed, and then Q2 and Q4 are just quiet. So a lot of the things I really struggle with this time of year is how do I get to a point where I can step away and actually spend time with the family during the holidays? Because for our family, Thanksgiving isn't just, about the turkeys and that. Our daughter was also born on Thanksgiving, so it's also a time of celebration for us. You have Thanksgiving parties, you have birthday parties, things of that. So it's a lot to juggle just for family requirements and obligations. With work, it's interesting because as I get into Q4, I start looking at planning out where I need to be for next year. You start looking at the books, you start making sure things are balanced, that you can cover the bills to the end of the year. And then do you have what you need to go into next year? Do you have that little nest egg so you don't start next year off kind of in the red? Sometimes that happens because just time wise with holidays and that, checks don't always come when they are supposed to. The other thing is, for me personally, I always start reflecting on what were the goals. Like you said, what were we trying to accomplish at the start of the year? Where am I at? You kind of go through those checkpoints of, did I accomplish most of what I was trying to do? We try to stick to that 80-20 principle because you aren't always going to get 100% done, but you don't want to beat yourself up. But if you're not even at 80%, then you got to kind of question, did you set your goals too high? Or what happened? Did you have a shift? Because sometimes, especially around the holidays, if you aren't meeting your goals, if you're not kind of staying on track, it can get a little depressing because you're like, oh crap, things aren't going right. Things aren't, it can be a hot mess. And usually that's when you need to stop, take a step back, and just, like we've talked about in building better habits, make those lists, kind of reset, set those goals. And I'm actually doing that this weekend. I've actually been going through and getting the books ready to wrap up for the year. Met with the accountant yesterday. So I'm starting to get into that year-end mindset, but already looking at next year as to what I need to do, what customers do I need to start bringing in, and things like that. However, it's not just work. Again, you got to make sure you plan for those holidays and make sure that you have time for your family and time for yourself, because this is also one of those times where obligations from work and obligations from family can overlap, and you might get a little stressed out because there's too much going on. If you find that happening, just cut your list back a little bit. What is not mission critical, move that maybe to the first quarter, or move that, to your non-family time so that you can spend time with the family. And that might help ease you through the holidays.
Yeah, I think this is where it's always a challenge for me, and also the message even that we have during this season is because we are, as part of like building better developers and stuff like that, we are driven. There are things that we do that we don't work 9 to 5s. We don't, clock in and then clock out, and that the work lives with us. It is yet another family member. Sometimes it's the most obnoxious family member, and sometimes it's a great one. And so this is always a time where there's that challenge of finding balance between spending some time to recharge, spending some time to enjoy your life outside of work, but also finding ways to take these lulls essentially in a way to use that to be better at your work. For example, one of the things that a lot of companies will do, they'll have a quiet period. Maybe it starts at Thanksgiving, maybe it's the last couple of weeks of December, or there's different times like that. And you may have one in the middle of the summer sometimes, but when you have that quiet period, it's from a business point of view, it's a great time to catch up on technical debt. Now, as an example for where it can help us, is maybe there's some things that you are dealing with that are part of that idea of automation and things like that, where maybe you're spending a lot of time on something and you need some time to just dig into it and actually automate it. Or house cleaning. For example, like I was just looking at stuff the other day because I've got a Dropbox account and had a bunch of stuff out there, and it was saying like, wow, you've got a lot of crap out there. And it was like, you may run out of space for storing all this stuff. And I started looking at it. And there's a lot of stuff that I don't need out there. It's old, it's not, it's like, stuff that's out there. Mailbox is the same thing. You may have tons and tons of, depending on who you are, you may have an inbox that's got thousands of emails. If those things have been sitting there in 6 months, just like sweep through and delete them. At least now you have hundreds of emails instead of thousands. Things like that. Maybe there's a tool that you've been wanting to work with, or a toy that you wanted to work with, and use this time, like spend all the time to do it. One of my, just as a, something that may help you out, is years ago, I think I've talked about this. I would take usually like 2 weeks off the Christmas and New Year's time frame. Take a solid 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks. It sort of depended on how the holidays fell and what sort of vacation I had. This started when I worked for, had an employer, and I found I could take 5 or 6 days of vacation time and turn it into like 2.5 weeks of vacation time when you factor in the holidays and stuff like that. Now, during that time, it was always a great idea or a great opportunity for me to, because I had so much time, and especially if I wasn't traveling or anything and we were just hanging out at home and doing the regular stuff, I had lots of time every day that I could also get some work done, along with just like sleep in, chill, watch Christmas movies, whatever it happened to be. And I would get into a habit of, because it was just, everybody else sort of sleeping in and stuff like that, I get up and maybe at, 7, 8, or 9, something like that, go spend 3, 4, 5 hours working, get into effectively lunchtime, and then just take the rest of the day off. And that was part of my deal. It was sort of like I said, okay, I'm going to limit what I'm going to do. Yes, I'm going to do a little bit of work. I'm going to do some extra stuff, but I am, essentially going to time box it, or I'm going to limit it and say at this point, I'm done for the day. And then I would go, and then sometimes part of that was like, that means that I'm going to turn around and say, okay, so now I'm going to like go play some games for a couple hours or something like that because I have that opportunity. It's finding that balance among these things. And, if you've been spending all year working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, something like that, it is not going to kill you to take a week or two off and to not work for those couple of weeks. The work, trust me, work will still be there when you come back to it. So don't be afraid to walk away and allow yourself some time to like refresh and get back into it. And if you're like me and you enjoy your work, when you go away from it for a week or two, you're just that much more motivated to jump into it when you get back. Because probably you've had all these ideas while you were not working. And it's like, oh, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do that. I'm going to change this. I'm going to do that. You've got all of these things. And now you're like, all right, now I get to go attack these again. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really good point because there's been times where, and you were on some of the projects with me on this, where it's like we worked through the holidays, like we were working up to the deadlines, and that helped no one because at the end of the day, the people you need to get the work done typically are not going to be around during the holidays, and you're going to be stressing trying to get your piece done, but they're not there or people aren't there to answer your questions. So it's better to take a pause, take some time off, reflect, and go play a game, go for a walk, go do something that you normally don't have time to do. But the key is, it's a time for family. If you don't if you're not around your family, maybe go find some friends or go hang out at a park, look for a parade, or, if you have a small town nearby, go check it out, go walk the storefront. Sometimes that's, if you're not a huge shopper, sometimes the decorations on like small towns or like malls are fun to just kind of walk around, just browse and watch. And I'm not really a mall person anymore, but I used to just enjoy walking around the mall. It was safe, quiet. You don't have to worry about the weather. And then, get a hot cocoa. You just chill. And then when you're done, you go home, you relax. For those of you in colder climates, maybe sit down in front of the fireplace, read a book, do something that is kind of outside your normal a little bit, or something you just don't have time to do normally. Do it now. Take a break, and you'll be more refreshed at the end of this week, going into the next week and getting ready for that last crunch for the end of the year.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we've got stuff, we all have, requirements and responsibilities and stuff like that we have to deal with. But if you get to the end of all of your days and you're looking back and all you've ever done is you can check off the boxes of the projects that you've completed or the work that you've done or the boss's demands that you met or however it is, then you've missed out on life. There's a lot more to it. And while we do want to do the best that we can with, the time we have, we're focusing on our job, there's also a whole other life out there. And feel free to explore a little bit, do something different. Like I recommend often when we get into the new year about like, have a resolution that's different. Step into something you haven't done. We talk about career stuff all the time. We talk about things like, why don't you try to write a book or, start a podcast or do a blog or things like that, which are all good. And they don't necessarily have to be work related. They could be things like you start a blog on gardening or something like that. But if you have a hobby, particularly if you have a hobby that you have not had time for it in a while, take some of this time to actually go back and enjoy that hobby a little bit. If you struggle with a hobby, take two or three things and say, maybe this is something I would like. Try some things you haven't done. Like go take a painting class or go to like a yoga class at one of the local places or go for a walk or things like that. As Michael said, like sometimes just walking, around town, if you've got a good walkable downtown and going through storefronts, maybe you'll find a neat little restaurant or some sort of specialty store that you like, or a place to just go like chill and have a coffee or a drink or whatever it happens to be, or to just listen to music or just to hang out and listen to the conversations or people watch. There's so much more to life than the work. And this is a good time to be like thinking through those things. So not only how can you be a better developer, it's really like, how can you be a better you? How can you do the things that you enjoy and that you were meant to do and make the most of those? As always, one of the best ways you can do that is to send us an email at info@developreneur.com and let us know. I would love to hear during this season, what is maybe a holiday ritual or habit or something like that? What are some of the things that you do at the end of the year that have just become a part of who you are? Particularly if it has to do with like, some certain types of recreation time or things you do that really help you when you get into the January and February push of like starting a new year, or how you find a way to just like knock off all those items on your list to get done this year that you haven't gotten done yet. Also, you can do comments, you can do likes and all that kind of stuff wherever you find podcasts. You can go out to the developreneur.com or the YouTube channel Developreneur. You can check this out. You can leave us feedback there. You can go out to the developreneur.com site and you can go, there's a contact us form. You can sign up for the newsletters. There's all kinds of stuff out there. Note to self, I should probably mention that we have newsletters more often. I mean, it's not, you get the really good stuff, but the newsletter helps you get an idea of like, where are we going next and things like that. It just goes out once a month. And it's like anything else. It's an electronic newsletter. You can always hit delete if you don't like it, but it's just something to like keep up. And sometimes we do send special stuff out. That's just sort of like hey, this is going on, or hey, here's something we came across. So all of that's available on the site. That being said, enjoy this week. Enjoy the next couple of days as this coming out. You got the Thanksgiving holiday coming around and maybe the madness of Black Friday, depending on what you're doing. And then we'll be getting into December as we're starting to get through the end of 2024, which is just, again, mind-boggling. But while your mind is boggled, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time.